Hi everyone, my name is Natalie DC. Welcome back to my channel. I am a reader, writer, and artist here to talk about books with you, and art, and maybe a little bit of writing. In today's video, I will be doing a wrap-up of all of the green books that I read in the month of April. I read a total of 7 green books that I will be going into in depth in this video, plus an 8th honorable mention simply because I read it for school. But it also happens to be green, so I decided to include it. Without further ado, let's get into it. The first green book that I read in the month of April is We Borrowed Gentleness by Estanislao Lopez. I hope I'm pronouncing the author's name right. This is a short poetry collection that I actually received as an ARC. It is a raw, honest poetry collection that explores themes of patriarchy, family, religion, and the devastating impact of natural disasters. This is a debut collection, and the verse in this is absolutely breathtaking. This collection gorgeously creates rhythm and rhyme that only enhances the message that this collection is trying to send. I can't say much about the collection, like the story itself, because there is not much of a story. All of the poems are quite abstract, so I would encourage you to check out this collection. It's very short, but it does pack a lot of meaning. My favorite poems from this collection were Diaspora, The Offering, The Framework of an Imaginary Nation, and The Maker. My only qualm with this collection is that I wish all of the poems were sort of separated into different parts that would have kind of delineated their themes instead of mixing all of them up. I thought that could have created a better structure to the collection as a whole. But overall, I really enjoyed this collection, and I definitely plan on checking out Lopez's future works because he is an amazing writer, an amazing poet, and yeah, I definitely want to check out more of his stuff. So I gave this collection 4.5 stars. Again, that critique with the structure was what bumped it down from a 5 for me. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. The cover is green, so decided to count it. On to the next one. The next green book that I read in the month of April is Dyke, Geology by Sabrina Imbler. This is another sort of poetry hybrid collection that poetically explores geology, sapphic romance, and Asian heritage told through the perspective of a lover of volcanoes. So a very unique premise, and I actually bought a copy of the collection, so I have it here with me. It has this beautiful cover. This was published by Black Lawrence Press, so definitely support your indie poets and poetry presses. But yes, this is a beautiful collection, very short as you can see. It was a very quick read. It is more of a poetry prose, that's why I called it hybrid. A very easy read, yet still packs that punch like the previous poetry collection that we discussed. I actually gave this 5 stars because I love this concept and this collection overall so much. It's such a unique premise for a chaptered poetry / essay chapbook, and I ate up every word of praise towards nature, queer relationships, and the stuff that just shapes us all. The verse is stunning, the story again is short yet impactful, and as I said, the cover is beautiful. So yeah, while I wish it was longer, I see the purpose to chapbooks. They're supposed to be short, so overall this is perfect. I didn't have any critiques, so I gave it 5 stars. I don't care if it's like kind of like a why'd you give it 5 stars? It's not revolutionary, but I really enjoyed it, so I would highly recommend it. I'm definitely going to check out more of Sabrina Imbler's works. I think they are an amazing poet and writer of all things weird and wacky and queer, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this. So yeah, I highly recommend. Again, the cover is green, so decided to count it for this month's challenge. Switching from poetry collections to graphic novels, the next green book that I read in the month of April is Dewdrop by Kay O'Neill. This is an adorable middle grade, very short graphic novel / picture book about an axolotl named Dewdrop and how he goes around a week before a festival in his neighborhood and helps out his other animal friends prepare for the festival. It's a very brief yet impactful graphic novel with a really cute, colorful art style that is very quintessential to Kay O'Neill, and it has very important messages for children of all ages about self-confidence and ocean preservation. While I am in this book's demographic, I still related to and really empathize with the characters, and yeah, overall I really love this story and this little cute picture book. So I gave it 4 stars. I probably won't read it again, but I still had a really fun time reading it. If you're into picture books, if you know someone with a kid who's into picture books, I would highly recommend this book. And maybe it'll encourage you to check out Kay O'Neill's other works that are more, not, I wouldn't say adult, but more adolescent. I believe this is their first delve into middle grade fiction, if I'm not mistaken. The next green book that I read in the month of April is The Magic Fish by Trung, nguyen. I hope I'm pronouncing the author's name right. This is a gorgeously illustrated, again, graphic novel. It is about a Vietnamese American boy named Tien who struggles to come out to his parents in a language that they'll understand. There's an incorporation of fairy tales, so basically this is a narrative within a narrative where we follow Tien's perspective as he makes his way through, I believe, freshman year of high school, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, but we also get to see him read these fairy tales to his mother, and we get to see the kind of behind the scenes of those fairy tales, if that makes sense. So there's definitely an incorporation of fairy tales within this very beautifully illustrated story within a story. I love the use of color between these two stories. Basically, like, each story, present day, the flashbacks, and then the fairy tales themselves are kind of painted in different colors to distinguish between all three timelines, which I definitely appreciated, because if there were no distinctions, I probably would have gotten confused more than once. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know I have qualms with graphic novels that have beautiful covers, such as this one, but they don't really take that colorful risk inside the story itself. But this one did not disappoint. The inside is just as beautiful, if not more, than the outside, and I couldn't appreciate it more for that. The characters themselves are well-rounded, they're complex, and they're lovable, and I adored looking at the very, again, beautiful illustrations that accompany these fantastical spins on traditional fairy tales such as Cinderella and The Little Mermaid. Again, I don't want to go into specifics of the story because I don't want to spoil anything, but I would highly encourage you to check this out. As I put in my Goodreads review, this is one of my favorite graphic novels that I've read in a while, so I gave it 4.75 stars, and I definitely want to check out this author's other work. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. Again, don't want to go too much into like spoiler territory. That's all I'm gonna say. The next green book that I read in the month of April is Savage Conversations by Leanne, Howe, or Howie. This is an ingenious, genre-bending work that combines playwright and poetry to tell the story of Mary Todd Lincoln, who was Abraham Lincoln's wife, and her haunting by a savage Indian after her husband ordered the mass execution of 38 Dakota men before he was assassinated. This is an incredibly informative read about a little-known horrific event that occurred on American soil. I never knew this happened. It was still shocking to read about, you know, years after attending school. So yeah, I would highly recommend it. It is very informative, yet it also tells this very abstract, poetic story about this woman having to take on these consequences of her husband's horrific actions while still being complicit in that history herself. The verse was incredible. There are footnotes and sightings which were very informative, and the use of these limited characters, so the characters in this playwright is the savage Indian, the rope, which is sort of the metaphor for death in the story, as well as Mary Todd Lincoln herself. This use of limited characters made the work all the more powerful, as you're kind of stuck in these three characters' perspectives, not going outside the narrative at all. I do wish there were more scene changes, as at the top of every page was telling you like where we are, and it's always at the sanatorium where Mary Todd Lincoln stayed after her husband's passing. We never see that scene change really, so there really was no point to include that past first few pages of the book if we weren't going to leave it almost for the entire book. So that was my only qualm with this work. I wish there was more variation in the scene, kind of playing with the characters, because after a while it did get repetitive. There are a lot of placeholder for images, like telling us what the images would have been, but I wish these were actual images. Would have made the work a lot more interactive. But nevertheless, this is a novella that I'll never forget. The story, again, is quite unique, very informative. It definitely taught me things that I had never known before. So yeah, I would highly recommend it if this sounds like something that would interest you. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to checking out more of the author's works. The next green book that I read in the month of April is Black Swans Stories by babitz. This is my second babitz book. I read Sex and Rage, another one of her novels, in the last video, so you can check out my thoughts of that work there. This book is a more non-fiction book. It actually, I believe it dramatizes a lot of babitz's experiences living throughout the 1980s and 90s LA, as she kind of tries to make it as a budding artist and writer. I still really enjoyed this work. Once again, I love her stream of consciousness writing, personal messages that were spread throughout this very fun and funky trips in LA was really, really well done in my opinion. My favorite story from this collection, which is a collection of 9 short stories / essays, my favorite from those 9 has got to be Expensive Regrets. I really enjoyed that story. It's basically where her and a lover of her have to stay inside this hotel that's very fancy while the outside world, and by outside world I mean LA, burns down because of the trial of Rodney King, and they're kind of left in this very shiny veneer that is the Chateau Marmont. But yeah, I really love this story, in particular just that funny idea of being stuck in this hotel while the world kind of burns around you is very reminiscent of what we as a society probably experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't know, I just related to that. Plus just her unique way of telling these funny stories while imbuing these very important messages. Yeah, that was definitely my favorite story from this collection. I actually enjoyed this book as much as I did Sex and Rage. I didn't like it any more or less than I did that. I gave it the same rating, 4.25 stars. Not much has changed for my liking of Eve Babitz from between reading Sex and Rage and reading Black Swans. I plan on reading more of her works, definitely. So I would highly recommend it if you're into women's lit or just Eve Babitz in general and you haven't checked out this work of hers. I would definitely highly recommend it. The last book that I'll be doing a sort of deep dive for in this video is one that's been highly anticipated for me personally. It is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book has been all over the internet, all over BookTok, Bookstagram, Booktube. Everyone and their mother has read this book, except for me, of course, as usual. But I finally got to read it in April, so I'm excited to be talking about it. You don't know what this book is about. It is a whirlwind of a novel about one woman's journey through the ranks of Hollywood as she desperately tries to balance her romantic and platonic relationship with her yearning for stardom. Like I said, this book was so hyped up for me, so I had the highest expectations going into this reading, which is probably the detriment for me, as I didn't actually like this book as much as I expected to. Let me explain. While I was very engaged with the story itself, I loved Evelyn Hugo's character. I thought she was witty, I thought she was fun. I was very on the edge of my seat during many of the high tense moments in the story. I found some key aspects of this novel itself lacking. For example, the main character Monique, who, if you're not familiar with this book, she's basically this reporter that's interviewing Evelyn Hugo. So throughout the book we kind of go back to her perspective, where she's living alone in her apartment after getting a divorce from her now ex-husband, and we kind of get to see her story kind of having sort of a parallel to Evelyn Hugo's, and at the end we get to see why these two actually, why Evelyn Hugo sought this reporter out to tell her story to the world. But as far as Monique goes, she is a very boring character to compared to Evelyn Hugo, and for a main character that's not good, because every time we would go back to the present from Evelyn Hugo's whirlwind of a story that obviously took place in the past, I would be bored. I'd be like, let's get back to Evelyn Hugo. I do not care about this Monique character. I don't know why we have to suffer through her perspective. So I wish the author either made Monique more interesting as a character or just took her out entirely and just focused on Evelyn Hugo. Maybe the person that Evelyn Hugo is talking to could have been like an anonymous person, like you referring to the reader or someone who was important to her in her life. I don't think Monique was very important as a character, in my opinion. Similarly, the twist ending, which involves, you know, Evelyn Hugo's relationship with Monique and why she sought Monique out to tell this very like scandalous story to the world, which is her coming out. Side note, I wish the person that Evelyn Hugo loved the most, which was like the big question of the story, was revealed way later in her narrative, because in the first like I'd say 50 pages, she reveals to the reader who she loved the most, and spoiler alert, sort of, it's a woman. So she's coming out in this big narrative as bisexual, which she had never in her life done before. So that's very important. I wish this was saved till the end, because that would have made a better twist ending in my opinion, rather than kind of just asking this big question, oh, out of all the 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo, who did she love the most? And it ended up being this person that she befriended early on in her career, and she kind of tells the reader and Monique that very early on in the story. So yeah, it was very anticlimactic. I wish that was revealed later instead of this twist ending, which is, I'm not going to spoil it of course, but again, it is the relationship between Evelyn Hugo and Monique. I found it very shoehorned in. I thought it came out of left field, and not in a good way, like, whoa, I never would have seen that coming, more like in a huh way, like, why did we do this? like that's it, you know? So yeah, didn't really like the twist ending, sort of a bad taste in my mouth in the end of this really engaging story overall. Finally, my last small critique is that I wish that each section slash part of the book, like the book is sectioned off based on Evelyn Hugo's husbands, but I wish within those parts that each chapter was kind of delineated where we are in history, or at least maybe even each part being this is where we are in time, because I definitely got the time period mixed up in my head quite a lot. Other than those qualms, I did really enjoy the story, believe it or not. I gave it 4.25 stars. I just had a lot of qualms with it, again, because my expectations of this book were so high. Would I recommend it? Yes. Do I think it's the best book ever? No. That said, I am very excited for the movie adaptation. I have hope that Monique will be a more interesting character and that this will translate better on screen than it does in a book form, because I think this is a really interesting and engaging story, but I don't know if a novel is the best sort of medium to tell the story through. I think it could be better translated on screen, so we'll see if I'm right. Maybe I'll start doing film reviews on this channel or something. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. Finally, just as an honorable mention, because again, this book I read for school, but it also has a green cover, so I decided to shout it out, is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by chbosky. This is one of my favorite books, favorite movie adaptation, speaking of movies. Yeah, I love this book so much. If you haven't heard of it, it is about a boy named Charlie living in Pittsburgh in the 90s, and he's lonely and he is starting his freshman year of high school and he wants to befriend someone, and he befriends these two people and they mean the world to him, and it's talking about his mental health. I just love it so much. I love this book so much. If you have never read it, you need to read it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this book. I analyzed it to death for one of my classes in college, hence why I don't want to go too in depth with it in this video. But yeah, I really, really love this book. So if you haven't read it, just check it out. I promise you'll love it. But guys, those are all the green books that I read in the month of April. I really hope you enjoyed this video. School has just ended for me. June will be the last Rainbow Reading Challenge video that I do before I take a couple months off, because I'm going on family vacation. I won't be able to do the reading challenge and the wrap-ups, but I'll try to be working on other types of videos, like sort of a book trailer for my poetry chapbook, Blue Pearl, available for purchase at Bottle Cap Press right now in the link description. Go get it. Shameless self promo. But yeah, I will be working on other stuff over the summer, so expect that. Don't just expect these monthly wrap-ups. Yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, comment down below what you read in the month of April, and subscribe for more bookish and artsy content. I hope you have a fantastic day, week, month, whatever you're feeling, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!